Welcome, welcome, welcome to the bounce off. What's going on, B?
Yo, P. I mean, it's been a real chaotic week over here in my household, but
hmm
uh the one thing that's not chaos, it helps always bring me down, sports, dude. I can't even tell you how much I've gotten into sports in the past week.
Dude, but it is chaos because the melee that was the USA Canada hockey game.
Tell me, as somebody who started the year off being like, I haven't really watched sports, tell me that that's the moment, P, where you're like, fuck yeah,
Yeah.
I love sports. I'm getting back into this shit because there are three fights in 9 seconds.
I was thinking, so when I was watching that, and then a couple of games after that one too, the commentators keep talking, everyone keeps bringing up Miracle on Ice.
Ugh.
So the game from what 1980 Olympics where it was the US versus Russia and we were
Yeah.
like in the middle of the Cold War, so it was like
Yeah.
super meaningful. We were the underdog and then we beat them. Um
Americans love to tell that story, by the way.
yeah,
Everywhere you
I would
fucking go, it's Miracle on Ice, Miracle on Ice.
wait, do Canadians hate that story?
Well, it's
I've
just
never met
so
someone who's
played
like,
out. It's so
yeah.
played out, dude. We get it, guys. We get that shit.
So like the commentators keep bringing it up, but what was interesting about that reference in relation to the USA Canada game is that it was like sparking some of the same emotions because I feel like when you get booed by a country that many times, you sort of want to show up and make them swallow it. And as someone who's like really struggling with her own country right now and wouldn't
Mm,
mind getting rolled into yours, I
mm.
memorized your national anthem, including the bilingual one. I'm working on it. I'm
Stop.
gonna
Oh my
sing
God.
it to you one day.
Oh my God, I'll
I
cry.
I did feel like there were high stakes to the US winning and I was rooting for them.
Okay, so as the Canadian on the show, I really feel the need to clarify why we're booing during the national anthem.
You don't even need to. Like it's warranted, but sure, go for it.
But we're not booing the hockey players and the basketball players and the athletes. We're actually not booing them. We're not booing you, the other fans who are with us from the US. And truthfully, we're actually not even really booing
The
the
US.
US. Yeah, we're
hmm
not booing the country. We're booing the leader of your country who keeps threatening our sovereignty for zero reason and wanting to stoke some flames. So, truthfully, once he leaves us alone, I can promise you this booing will stop.
I know. I'm just wondering if, because like the booing doesn't feel that way as an American, right? Like it does feel like we're at a sports event and the fans of Canada are booing the US national anthem. If it was like all the Canadians like took a knee, like they were kneeling during the US anthem, then I would be like, "Oh, we are protesting and I'm here for it." But I feel like the boo is stoking flames where you guys don't want it stoked, right? Because now you're getting counter boos in the US and then the USA team was all fired up because you're booing the US. So I am here for the protest. I just like I wonder what Canada could do to really like make it a protest and not just like boo at these games.
Well, the way Canada's protesting is by
And not buying our stuff. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
not people don't want to go to the game in Boston. They don't want to even travel to the US. They don't want to.
But I need people to know that. Like I think when most of America sees Canada booing, then they get all riled up. And because patriotism is the thing right now, right? Everyone is like
Yes.
USA. So it's
Yes.
like I need them to understand exactly what we did to Canada and why Canada feels this way about us. Like I really want that.
I think you're giving the average sports fan a lot of credit to understand the complexity of the
I
political
know.
tensions.
Yeah.
But sports and politics, sports as a place for protest has always been a place of change and of movement and of evolution. That being said, listen, do I think it's funny that we're booing the US national anthem? Yes, I do. I really, really do. Because that's about as far as we're going to go.
Yeah.
Like,
I also feel like the joke has run its course a little bit. But you guys
well,
keep doing you. I like
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Again, when we stop being jokingly called a 51st date, like we'll stop that shit. We'll stop it. Literally the ball is in not our court. The hard part is I think some people are believing that we're somehow booing them as an American fan in the arena or the players on the ice, which couldn't be further from the truth. So, yeah, I think what we need to be maybe doing a little bit more clearly is communicating why exactly the booing is happening.
Yeah. I've
So
heard one or two commentators, like when it was first happening, I heard someone say because of the tariffs. But this is also more like the tariff thing sort of like dissolved a little bit. This is about more than that. This is the principle of the tariffs. This is the whole belittling of our brother nation in this weird like BF-51. Like you guys are a huge ass country with multiple provinces. Like it just totally reduces Canada.
it does add for a more juicy hockey game, P.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Yeah.
And obviously, people are wondering, like, how in the hell did these three fights happen at the start of the game? Who coordinated what? Was there locker room talk behind? I could see, like, I had a couple of girlfriends text me who were just like, "Oh, dude, like, here's the goon part of the game. Like, I'm not watching Canada US to watch this part of it."
Um,
To which you would respond.
I wasn't necessarily expecting it, but I didn't hate it, you know? And normally I don't care that much about the fights. I feel like, unless they're about something, sometimes they feel a little fake.
Yeah,
But this felt so real that I was immediately invested, and then it set the tone for the
that's it.
whole game.
That's it. If you're the whoever in the NHL decided to do Four Nations Face Off as the format, the moment you saw that, you were like, I am fucking validated.
Yeah, I'm a
This
genius.
is the
Yeah.
best shit ever. That game was, I think, the most watched like non Stanley Cup game in years, because of course it was.
Yeah.
And at the time of you and I recording this, we haven't seen the final yet between the US and
Mm-hmm.
Canada.
It's tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the intensity is going to be cranked up even more. And now what's happening though is people are drawing comparisons because, of course, this happened the same time as the NBA All-Star game. And
Mm-hmm.
everyone's just like, look at these NBA players just like not giving a shit. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
these guys are willing to get injured
Yeah.
for quality of the game, for pride, for whatever. And
And they
it's like,
did.
and they did, and it worked.
Yeah.
I fucking hated the outcome of the game, but it's okay. We'll get it in the final. But I just wonder, like, what could the NBA now learn from the NHL? And truthfully, I think there's a part here that the NHL just got lucky with, and that is political tensions are
Yeah.
kind of actually working in their favor with this, which is a really fucked up thing to say, but is the truth.
No, it
So,
was a perfect just like Miracle on Ice, right? The whole thing about that whole reference is like it was the perfect storm of things that collided in this matchup, and it made this so much bigger than a hockey game.
so much bigger than a hockey game, and I will see it again in Boston for the final.
Yeah, I certainly don't think that the US should be booing Canada. And when that happens, I just am reminded that like they don't understand
I
what
don't
this was
get
really
it.
about. Like
Yeah.
which sucks. Like I think someone in Canada needs to do some messaging, I don't know, around what
I
the
mean, I,
booing is
I feel
about.
like I just did. So if we could have that
You
audio
did.
clip
Okay.
go
Let's
viral.
yeah, I'll put it up. Yeah.
Because I'd also
Wait.
then would love somebody on the American side to be like, dude, can you explain why you're booing too? Like, can you articulate that?
Well, I also read that NHL players haven't played in an Olympics since 2014. So this is kind of serving that function. And we know from this past Olympics, like just how patriotic things
Yes.
got.
Yes. Yeah, this is a good lead up to the Olympics for sure.
The
Everything
Winter
about this,
Olympics, yeah. Yeah,
honestly.
I love this. It's
Yes.
sort of sad. Like Finland and Sweden have been cool teams because they have some good guys, but it sort of feels like because the number of players from those two teams that are in the NHL are so much smaller in terms of the overall share than Canada and US, which are at this point almost more evenly matched. I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
40 and 35% or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that just feels like, oh, we invited we invited these two dudes.
I know. It kind of feels like, they have their own little rivalry, but really it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like us.
Yeah.
You guys go play in the backyard. We'll go do our thing
Yeah.
here. Like, stop.
Cute. Enjoy your whole day of daylight.
Totally. Well, I'm glad it got you pumped about sports. It really has, even for me, like I can't remember a time really where I'm just like, I need to be, TV needs to be on at this time, maybe other than
Yeah.
Kendrick's halftime show.
Yeah.
TV has to be on. We got to do it like Thursday. We're already like planning our dinner menu. Like, what are we going to watch during the game?
Oh, what's your dinner
What are
menu?
we? Oh, we're like going to grill. We're definitely going to barbecue because that's like what we do during big sporting
Oh,
events. But because I can't sit and do a full meal. I got to nibble
yeah.
along the way. I'm too fucking nervous,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know?
It's gonna be tense. It's gonna be really tense. Plus, like a lot of our main guy, like Matthew Kachuk got injured. He didn't play the last game. But then they brought Kreider in, which was so cool. We like
Yeah.
him.
No one knows. Every morning, the like press is reporting on who's in warm-ups because
Yeah.
just of the U.S. team right now, there's some injuries. There's like some illness happening on the team, so no one knows the full lineup for.
Well, Dan does think and hope that Kreider should play instead of maybe one of the guys who played against you guys in the
Okay.
first game. So
Okay.
let's see what happens.
All right. I'm pumped. I'm
Oh
there.
shit. This is like the most tension I've felt with you ever.
I do. Yeah, a little bit,
There's like a
right?
little bit of competitive tension.
I do feel it.
Yeah.
It's also like kind of arousing. I sort of in a good way. There's like a weird flavor. You're like, oh, this
Oh,
keeps it spicy in our relationship, you
I
know?
can always count on you to make it lovable.
To make it sexy. Can I tell you something that's not sexy?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna play a bit of a guessing game.
Okay.
So, list just got published. Top 100 paid athletes of 2024.
I have this on mine as well. I have a
Okay,
lot to
so
say
your
here.
your guess won't.
My guess won't. Hey, listeners,
Yeah. Okay.
how how
So
many women do you think are in the top 100 professional
yeah,
paid athletes?
yeah. Take a moment. How many women do you
Write a
think are in
number
the top
down or
100?
something. We'll give you a range. So if you wrote a number down, it was wrong because it's zero.
Because it's
The number is none.
if you even spent time thinking, what a waste of time. Couldn't have even thought about a number. Joke's on you. Oh my God. So Cristiano Ronaldo is number one, 260 million. By the way, what this is comprised of, so it's salary, prize money, and endorsements,
Okay.
which we know men make more than women on all of those. Coco Gauff, she's the top earning female athlete at 30.4 million compared to 260 and doesn't crack the 100 top 100 with that number.
Well, what kind of flabbergasted me was like these soccer guys are getting paid so much more. Like the number two behind Ronaldo at 260 was Steph Curry at 153.8, which is so much lower.
So much lower.
That
Yeah.
gap is insane.
I don't I think it just speaks to the international market of soccer, quite
Yeah.
frankly. Like I don't
Yeah.
know the commercials that Ronaldo's doing in fucking Japan and you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I think they really do get them out there globally doing marketing initiatives. And he's built a brand that's quite international. Whereas I wouldn't say like the NBA is there or tennis or whatever, but he has been, I think, number one like quite a few times. And
Yeah.
even on the downslope of his career, he's still crushing it.
The funny thing about this is that number 100 on the list is Daniel Jones, who was the tortured former quarterback of the Giants, who we in this house, we were pulling for him, man. Just like
Oh,
all hopes on Daniel Jones. There is no woman athlete that is paid more than Daniel Jones.
like Coco Gauff, who has won a U.S. Open, is still paid less than Daniel Jones.
Or Caitlin Clark, who has endorsements from everyone and gets appearance fees for things. I don't even know where she landed on the list.
You know, if I really feel my feels on this, I actually get incredibly fucking angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, we talk about the pay disparity. This is like non-existent. Where like
Hmm.
you look at this list and you go, what's the point of being a work busting my ass as a female athlete if I'm just never like where's the hope? Where's the
Where's the hope? I think that's
oh,
the thing, right? Like, we women, I guess, since the 70s and 80s have been talking about this glass ceiling and earning 75 cents on the dollar and not being promoted to C-suite positions and all of this stuff. And here you have a list from 2024 of athletic income, 100 people, all men.
like so many mediocre men.
So Daniel Jones,
Daniel
who I'm sorry, I
Jones.
love you, Daniel Jones, but like that's insulting.
Mediocre at best, dude.
That I mean, like these leagues that the men play for are the mainstream leagues, and they are the legacy leagues that have the viewership built in and have the
Right.
money behind them. Now we have talked about like entrepreneurs from different backgrounds investing in women's sports, and so maybe there will be a day where there is more parity here, but it was really something to see this broken down like that.
What it does is well, the reason why like the anger frustration is I know there are people out there who have been out there for decades trying to fix this disparity problem, trying whatever they can, throwing money at it. Like there are people out there. It's just there's not enough. There's not
Hmm.
enough advocates. There's not
Yeah.
enough support in it. And it's very, very frustrating.
And it's hitting a moment right now where all of the efforts are being devalued, right? Now
Yes.
there's been such a scaling back that nobody is feeling or going to feel the need to prioritize this in the same way that we have.
Well, can I tell you why this is extra frustrating to go along with
Yeah.
like another thing that I really did a bit of a deep dive in this week, which is UNIP talk a lot about the safety of being a female fan in
Hmm.
these sports. And something happened this week at a tennis championship in Dubai where I think the player's name, so Emma Raducanu, I don't know if that's how she pronounces it, but all of a sudden she's in her match. She's lost the first two games and she becomes on the court visibly distressed. So there's a video of this. So she approaches the umpire in tears and like seemingly takes refuge behind the ump's chair.
Oh no.
And you're like, what is going on? So go to find out there's like a guy in the audience who she said has previously shown fixated behavior towards her. He approached her in public earlier that day or the day before, and then she saw him in the front row during the match. And who knows what he's doing, how he's looking at her, what he's saying. But security ended up kicking him out of the venue. I think the Women's Tennis Association ended up banning him from, all future events. But it really got me into this. Wait, I've been hearing this storyline a lot in the last few
Stalking.
months.
Yeah.
So Gabby
Simone.
Thomas,
Hmm.
U.S. Olympian, she has been posting a lot on social media about getting like a recent pattern of harassment. Coco Gauff said
Hmm.
there's a group of men who seem to, this is fishy P, always know her flight info. And this group shows up at her terminal or her gate asking her to sign stacks of pictures. Like
Right.
this happens so frequently that she's just like, how the hell is this happening? Paige Buchers, UConn basketball player. This past December, a guy pleads guilty to stalking her. Caitlin Clark had a stalker who was just charged recently. Like, we talk so much about safety as a fan, but the safety of these female players needs to be talked about much more. You're going to pay for shit. You're not going to pay in the top 100. Oh, and now we're also having our safety threatened and violated. I just think these organizations like FIFA and WTA and whatever, you have to take a stronger stance on fan behavior. Often these people are known, and I'm saying people, but let's be honest, it's men. Making sure there are stricter bans, making sure that there's legal action these women can take against these harassers. Of course, there's the daily shit you could do, like investing in security for the athletes.
Yeah, so that they don't feel like they have to put up the funds for their own safety.
Yeah, like what are we talking about here? Like every female athlete needs a fucking bodyguard now? Like
Right.
it's just, you want them to be able to focus on the sport, not be
Hmm.
nervous, not be like, show up to a tournament not worrying about the presence of this jackass. I would probably guess that female athletes get a lot more DMs or on social media of like harassing, stalking type behaviors there too. So my hope is that these organizations would put a lot more attention to the online presence as well. But wow, Pete, it really, like, to see that tennis player clearly upset and wanting to hide in this like chair, like, what the fuck, dude? It was heartbreaking to watch. I don't know, P. Like, what do you think we have to do? I mean, the more these athletes speak out, of course, the better it is, as hard as that can be. But is it as simple as like, let's get security for them? Or I mean, I'm basically like, P, how do we solve this societal problem?
I think it I think it's like I was saying about why Canada's booing the US. I think there needs to be messaging around why this isn't okay.
Hmm.
Right? Like, yeah, sure, they can like get them security and then these women will feel like, okay, I have security. But I think what we need is widespread acknowledgement of this issue and enough visibility that people know this is not okay and that it in essence kind of recruits the fans to be vigilant on behalf of the athlete, right? Where the fans get to be a little bit your bodyguards because we are all kind of on this initiative to make sure that this doesn't happen and that these women have a good competition.
I don't
I
hear
think the
this much.
leagues need to do that, right? The leagues need to be the one that are like, this has become a little bit of an epidemic with our athletes and with female athletes in all the sports, and so here is our official stance on this.
Yes.
Because like until I read that post about Gabby and Coco, because I think she was like responding
Hmm.
to Gabby Thomas, I didn't know that this was happening to this degree, like that this many of them had that experience. And so like if someone like me who's like looking for that kind of content doesn't know that it's happening, then nobody knows that it's happening.
I literally just went to Google female athlete stalker after this, and there's in the last 5 months, you would recognize like all these names I just threw out. These are all women who recently have been harassed or stalked. People were doing commentary like mental health problems, this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's a male problem. Sure, there might be some comorbidity with a mental health diagnosis, but we need to get real here about how men make women feel unsafe. And this is one of the ways in sports that it shows up. You and I, our lived experiences on the fan side of things for sure.
Well, what's super useful about the mental health narrative that people throw around, right, as a justification for this kind of behavior is that once you use those words, mental health, it essentially absolves everyone of doing anything.
Correct.
When in fact, the mental health issue, especially mental health issues amongst men, is growing. It's becoming a much worse problem than it ever was. And nobody gives a fuck about it because it's mental health. So I
Right.
don't know if it's like, oh, it's on the individual. Nobody wants to step up and do something systemic to address mental health issues in men. And it's all like it's rooted in aggression that they don't know how to process and they haven't had the education and the kind of coaching on how to do that.
Right. Like, guys, by the way, you also do not benefit from this. Like, this is
Yeah,
not
right.
work in your favor for us to not
How
pay
how are you
attention.
feeling right now? Like, are things going well? Are you always doing just chill and good? Like, probably not.
How's your masculinity? Feel like, yeah, you're
Yeah.
doing great in
You're
life?
feeling pretty secure in that area. Nothing can shake it. You feel any anxiety? Is there any anxiety going on? Yeah, it's just, we've talked about this so much just in our like professional work where like it can be so disheartening to be a mental health professional and live in a world where people do not give a fuck.
Do not
Like
give a fuck.
organizations don't give a fuck, governments don't give a fuck, communities don't give a fuck, cultures don't give a fuck. So it's like this is what happens.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. And we'll just keep seeing athletes being stalked and harassed in the news. We'll keep hearing about charges and convictions. I really hope we don't hear about something more awful happening. And
Yeah.
usually that's what it takes for
That's
something
what
to
it
fucking
takes, right?
happen.
Right.
Someone to
But
get
girls,
seriously
don't let that
harmed.
happen. Get what you need to get and set the boundaries you need to set.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yikes. I have more bad news. It's interesting though. This combines two things we've talked about before, which is college football and the climate.
Okay.
So, remember when Dan was on and he was talking about how the switch for UCLA, USC, and Stanford out of the Pac 12 into the Big Ten led to a lot of like logistical things because now these kids and their families are having to figure out how to fly across the country for
Right.
games, which makes it so much harder for fans to come, for
Right.
families to make it happen. Turns out it also means that their carbon emissions are off the charts.
Oh, good points. All these
So
flights. Oh.
UCLA and Stanford now have the biggest carbon footprints in the NCAA.
I'm glad somebody's calculating and reporting this.
Yeah, there's an LA Times, he's like the climate writer, Sammy Roth of the LA Times, he's on it. But I thought that was fascinating, right? We make these decisions that are business decisions, and then they ultimately always have some sort of climate ramification, labor ramification. Someone gets fucked in business decisions that are short-sighted for the purpose of financial gain.
But
We're
money,
in
P.
late stage. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what this is, V.
Well,
Like,
will
what are
money get us out of climate change? No?
Yeah, no, I like whatever. We've severely fucked ourselves, and that's where we are.
I wonder what that means for, how certain companies commit to their, like, whatever carbon footprint. I've never even thought about educational institutions being a part of that.
Well, they are. A lot of them are, especially the UCs. Like they're so into LEED certifications
Right,
and,
right.
green buildings. A lot of companies, like airline companies, basically just greenwash what they do by saying like, "Oh, we're making donations as a way to offset our climate." So then they can say, "We're going to be carbon neutral by 2027," but it's really just because they're like, oh, giving Greenpeace something
Yeah, yeah.
to like make up for their shit.
Damn. The way that we have to constantly compromise our values, you know what I mean? To engage in the world. This just got real fucking deep. But I was just thinking, like,
I know.
imagine you're a player and you're like studying environmental sciences, right? And
Yeah.
you know all about this shit, and then you have to engage in it, but you like,
And then you get on a plane
when you get in a
and
plane,
you're
you're like,
like, oh,
fuck,
fuck.
yes, I have to do this. Like, just the cognitive dissonance we sit with, the way that we resolve that inner conflict.
Oh,
This is why you drop the gloves and you fight 3 times in 9 seconds. Like, just
yeah, exactly. This
get it
is
all out, dude.
angst.
Fuck it.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
totally.
I mean, I do appreciate stories like this though, because I know a lot of people need sports to exist in its own sports vacuum for our sanity and
Right.
for just loving something with kind of without complication. But I think that I really want people to understand how much everything that we do is being touched by, the corporatocracy or government policy, and
Yeah.
it's touching your sports too.
Yes. And so many, I'm glad somebody is truly, like, I'm not even kidding, that is keeping eyes on this, reporting on this, and will continue to track it. Like, that's what we need. We need that data. But we have a guest today.
Yeah, on that note, get ready to have a ton of fun with us and Tod Goldberg. Tod, let me introduce our listeners to you and all that is you. We are so excited to have you. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
This is the wonderful Tod Goldberg. Tod is a very prolific writer and personality. He is the New York Times best-selling author of 15 books, including the Gangsterland trilogy, which is sick. His most recent book, 8 Very Bad Nights, was an anthology of Hanukkah noir, which is now a thing. The world can thank Tod Goldberg for that. He is the co-host of Literary Disco, a podcast about books and writing with Julia Pastel and every millennial's tween crush, Writer Strong, as well as Open
Love.
Book, a Coachella Valley. I knew you would love that.
Love.
Also Open Book, a Coachella Valley radio show with our dear friend Maggie Downs. And his next book, Only Way Out, releases this fall. So essentially, you are a very busy, impressive man who has decided to come and talk about sports with us.
Well, and to be clear, though, Literary Disco's on hiatus
Oh,
because
well, there's plenty of
Ryder's
episodes.
other podcast, the Pod Meets World one, earns him about $40 million a year. So we had to take a back seat on talking about the esoteric. Let him do his
Boo.
thing until they run out of
Boo.
seasons, apparently, of the
Look,
show. And then
yeah.
maybe he'll come back to us.
Well, Todd, you could say that you were co-hosting with Ryder Strong before
Yeah, I
as
mean,
castmates.
we did that show for like 11 years. We did it for a
I
really
know.
long
There
time.
are so
Yeah.
many episodes, and you guys talked about everything.
We did, and we even managed to get through the pandemic. We had planned to probably end the show right before the pandemic. Like we thought, oh, like we've had a pretty good decade-long run. We could probably stop doing this. And then the pandemic hit, and just like you two, we felt a calling for something larger
Mm.
to help not just America. Is there some music you guys can play? Not
Yeah.
just America, but the world. But then here's the thing that happened. I talked shit about the book Middlemarch, and all of England got mad at me.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. They wrote an article in the London Times about what a moron I am. And so then I had to continue to read the book.
I would
But
put that on my
we made good.
resume. That's badass.
Yeah, I ended up liking Middlemarch. I mean, I know that the nexus between Middlemarch and sports is slim. It's a line. And the line is me. Um, but eventually the people of England, my grandmother's ancestral home, no less,
Mm,
uh,
mm.
realized that I was capable of change. And
Wow.
again, if you could have some rising music.
Yeah.
And I changed along with the listeners as we read Middlemarch. And then
Wow.
the pandemic ended and we kept doing the show and then we stopped.
You
Well,
know,
evolution is not an easy thing. We know that from both being in the world of psychology.
Yes.
P,
Yes, that's great.
we've had Olympic gold medalists on this show, but I gotta say, Todd might be the most inspiring guest so far, based
A
off of
Well,
hundred.
I don't want to say that I'm sort of a guru slash model slash actor slash writer because I'm not.
But you
What?
are
Hold on. What did you have? What did someone win an Olympic gold medal in that was on the show?
figure skating.
Who'd you have on? Michelle Kwan?
Patrick Chan.
You had Patrick Chan on?
Uh-huh. He was our
Oh my God.
inaugural guest.
How did I miss this?
I don't know, Todd. I post about it every week.
And my wife is a big figure skating person. Like
Oh,
she knows the T. So whenever the Olympics
Oh.
come along, that's when her fandom reveals itself to me that apparently she's on like fucking figure skating message boards and stuff.
yes, there
And
is
she's like,
tea.
oh, she's like, so this person was hooking up with the Canadian, and then that person, and there's beef with and I'm like, okay, but is he gonna catch her still?
Oh my
Like, is
God.
he gonna catch her?
Your wife knows what's up. I have never learned so much about how sleazy those figure
Oh,
skaters can be, but also
deeply sleazy.
like real freaks in the sheets.
Yeah,
And like, I'm
yeah.
talking more than two people at a time here, guys. This is like very common.
Because
Wow.
their bodies can do things.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
they can fit like five in a shower. You know what I mean? So there's
That's
a
a great
lot
point. But
that goes
also, I don't
on.
know if you guys are as into this as I am, but I've seen the movie The Cutting Edge
Yes. I made a
50,
toe pick reference
yeah, 50
in
to
the
60
episode
times.
you didn't listen to.
The Pamchenko. It's too difficult. It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
It can't be done. Well, it can't be done because it defies physics. So if you watch the video of it, he spins her at a parallel and then somehow shoots her at a vertical. We have laws. Well, I mean, we used to have laws. We have laws of physics in this world that
Yeah.
don't allow you to spin something at the parallel and then shoot it into the vertical.
It's like when the bus in Speed has to jump the gap in the freeway, but there's no incline, and they just like
Yes.
magically make that arc.
Yes, that's the Pamchenko of buses.
Yes.
It can't be
I
done. It's too
I
dangerous.
love that you're on, Todd, because I think what you are going to be able to help us do is hit on the exact slice that we're trying to hit, which is sports fandom and intellectual nerdery.
I'm glad to fit in. Like, this is the Venn diagram I was born for. Like, not
Yeah.
athletic, but it can talk about it. Have all the shirts.
Well, okay, first question. Did you watch any of the NBA All-Star weekend?
So I did. I watched a little bit of it. I got a lot of theories and thoughts about All-Star games that I'd like to go into in depth,
Please.
possibly for an entire second episode. But I didn't watch it live, and then I saw all this stuff online about how the Spurs dudes were gaming the system, and I was like, oh, well,
Yeah.
if they're cheating, that I want to see. And I was like, to put the thought into it to cheat at the skills competition, like to decide, oh, this is what we're gonna do. Like of all the choices you could make in the world of things to think about and then do on television in front of the world, like showing the stupidity of the skills competition, like of all the things.
But can you explain what their end game was? They were just trying to get rid of the balls versus just shooting them so that they could more quickly advance to the next section.
Yeah, because it was about the overall time, not the accuracy of
So you
doing
didn't even have
things.
to make, okay, but
No.
because you lose a point if you don't make the shot, but they were like, that doesn't matter.
They're like, it doesn't matter because we're acing everything else.
Hmm.
Right.
So they had gamed the system. But here's my thinking about All-Star games. Do you guys have some time?
Yeah, please.
Here's my thinking about All-Star games. It used to be when we were kids. Now, granted, I'm older than both of you. But when we were kids, you would watch the All-Star game because you wouldn't get a chance to see all the players in the league on a regular basis. So, like, I'm a big baseball fan, according to my uniform that I'm wearing today. And the cool thing about the baseball All-Star game when I was a kid was that the leagues didn't play each other. So you never got to see the A's play the Giants. And so at the All-Star game, you get to see the A's play the Giants or, you know, something like that. But you got to see all your favorite players from all the leagues on the court or on the field at once, and that was cool. The other thing was that the players didn't make that much money back then. And so if you got to go to the All-Star game, there was a bonus in your contract that gave you a significant amount of money. And so there was a good reason to go out there and perform. Like people are on TV and they're seeing you and it's cool and they don't normally get to see you. You're getting some extra money, you're going to be competitive. But now, All-Star games, the reason there's no competition and no one wants to do anything is that everyone's paid so much that going to the All-Star game, they don't want to get injured and
Hmm.
lose themselves for the rest of the season. You get to see any game you want at any time across all sports leagues. And so you're familiar with every single player. Fantasy sports has stopped you from really caring so much about teams as much as you care about players.
Players.
And so the All-Star game is just sort of like a silly, like fraternity conference in the middle of the country every year where it's like good for them to drink and hang out with each other. But as a sporting event, it's kind of lame.
Okay, so I hear you on that, Todd. And for what it's worth, I usually also try to watch All-Star games,
Oh, and I watched them. I totally watched them
but this
because I'm a
NBA
sucker.
this NBA one was the second least watched ever of
Yeah.
all time of all NBA
Well,
All-Star
remember
games.
the year before, the final score of the game was like 217 to 186 or something like that.
It was so stupid. Like an exhibition game. It's really
Yeah.
like what the criticism was. So All-Star games, you're right, Todd. I like the context here of it was the thing to look forward to. Even in the skills competition. These
Yeah.
are cool things we don't get to see our players do. Can't wait to watch it. So okay, the NBA acknowledges it was shit last year. Let's do something new. And they do this new format with the 4 teams.
Right.
Did that work for you, Todd?
No. It was just now 4 games where people weren't trying. And then like there's that whole thing about like the rising stars versus the established people, and they were doing a lot of it based on sort of age. But some of the stars in the league are 26. And so therefore, and they've been in the league for 6 years.
Right.
And so it doesn't really work. And then having a tournament when there's already another tournament in the middle of the season now in the NBA,
Yeah.
it's like, just, you know what? Just have a thing in the middle of the season where like they get together and it's paintball. You know, like what I want to see is like Devin Booker like hiding out with a gun and he's shooting at, like Luca and they're just diving around and stuff. I want something that is not about basketball because I'm watching all the games anyway. So for the All-Star weekend, I want them to do some stuff that is outside their skill set. Like I want them ultimate fighting. I want them to playing paintball. I want there to be sort of like a commedia dell'arte thing where they go around to small villages and do comedy. I want them to maybe have a mime situation, It's like, oh, yeah, wow, like Devin Booker can mime. He can pull the rope.
I
Uh,
love this idea because we're always talking about how do you bring like your non-orthodox sports fans to sports, and
Right.
I think like a cutthroat extracurricular competition would be the way.
I think so.
well,
I mean, there used to
this
be this show, I don't know if either of you ever saw it, called Pros versus Joes. Do you guys know about this?
No.
100%. I remember that show.
So the
Yes.
Pallavi, if you did you see it, Pallavi also?
I don't think so.
So the conceit was people off the street competing against retired athletes at their sport. And usually the retired athletes would mop them. And these were typically guys that were, 10 years out of the game, even, and they would still mop them. But every now and then, a Joe would beat a pro that, didn't have any knees or whatever. But the whole conceit of it essentially was like, oh, you think you can come in off the street and beat Rich Gannon or whatever at football? Like, that's not going to happen. And so it plays into the psychology that we all have when we're yelling at these guys, like, hey, be more superhuman. I could have done that. I could have fucked
Hmm.
up and dropped the ball. And it was so fun to watch that because you got to actually see the difference between superhumans and schlubs. And these were schlubs that were athletes at some level. Like, they'd been like
Mm.
D3 point guards in the 90s or something. But it really showed that line between what a premier athlete is and what isn't. And I like sometimes when I watch the All-Star game, I'm like, you know what? For the 3-point competition, why don't they put Steph Curry against someone who posted some shit on Twitter saying like Steph Curry is washed?
I love that. I often don't think that I can really put into perspective what professional elite athletes are actually
Mhm.
accomplishing, and I feel like putting it side by side with an average Joe. I love, you know me and my
Yeah.
reality TV penchant. I feel like they need to bring this back.
I loved it. I watched it all the time. I mean, it goes to also sort of like a weird internet thing that I have of like watching someone decide, oh, I'm going to talk shit to the wrong guy in a bar, and that guy's an MMA fighter, and the guy's just like, punched him once, the guy's, laid out on the floor, and everyone's cheering because the guy was a drunk or whatever. It's like, backing it up is pretty hard. Or as Mike Tyson,
Yeah.
not a great guy, once said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
But it's so interesting. At least in pros versus Joes, like you would know who the pros were. These
Right.
were, famous people. I am surprised that even with the NBA bringing their star players, so P and I often talk about. You just mentioned too, Todd. Like maybe you don't necessarily follow a team anymore, but you follow a player.
Right.
So what a great way to showcase your player is to see them at the All-Star game, and even that is not working anymore
Yeah.
for the NBA.
There's not a dramatic through line is the problem.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And with baseball, they tried to do it by if you win the All-Star game, you get home field advantage in the World Series. But that also seems silly. It's like you're depending on, a member of the Oakland A's, for instance, to deliver home field advantage to the AL. It's like, well, that's great. The Dodgers are going to win again.
Yeah. Are you, Todd, of the mind? Because I've been hearing a lot from NBA fans that the game has changed so much that it's become less interesting to watch. There are calls for lessening the sort of three-pointedness of the game. I'm curious as a fan what you think of that. Because I like people shooting three-pointers. I feel like that's fun to
Yeah.
watch.
I like it too. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Like that was my beginning of my fandom. And that was the era of like, giant mastodon centers. And so when I grew up in the Bay Area, for instance, for the Golden State Warriors, which was my team and is still my team, do I need to remove my shirt? I need to
Yeah,
show
please.
it?
Yeah,
Bam!
we often
what was
ask
that?
our guests to remove their shirts. So
Bam!
this seems, yes, perfect.
So if you're listening and not watching on the YouTube, I'm wearing a Golden State Warriors shirt underneath an Oakland A's jersey. I'm not going to take anything else off. Um, but the Warriors, when I was a kid, they started off with Robert Parrish, who then, of course, was traded to the Boston Celtics and became a legend. But they had Robert Parrish when I was a kid, and before him, they had Nate Thurmond and they had Will Chamberlain, and so it was this whole sort of
Mhm.
litany of the greatest centers on earth had played for the Warriors. And so that whole era of seeing basketball go through the pivot essentially was very appealing to me as a kid. Like I understood it. It was sort of also like how you played board games. It's like, oh, you're going to center everything towards the flag in Stratego or whatever. Um, And so I got that. But as I became more of a fan of other sports, so like of football, for instance, and enjoying the speed of football, the joy of watching the pro game when I was a kid started to lessen until like the Showtime Lakers came along and that fast break style
Mm.
became a big part of things. And that, of course, then morphs into the Bulls era and all of that, where the bigs got sort of discounted for the 6'6" guards out of North Carolina. I like the far range shooting. I love 3-point shooting. I'm a Warriors fan, so I have to. Like that's all we had for, 20 years. But I miss defense.
Hmm.
Yes.
I miss them pressing, across the
Yes.
court. I miss I miss like a Rick Mahorn, Charles Oakley type who's smacking the
Mhm.
shit out of people. They come into the lane. I mean, I don't know if you guys are into this, but I would listen to a lot of those like old NBA player podcasts, and it's always like, well, it was 1966. We're in a smoke-filled Boston Garden. I came down the lane, and Bob Lanier was standing there. And Bob Lanier grabbed me out of the air, put me on the ground, and said, "Little boy, you come down here one more time, I'm gonna murder your whole family." I'm like, yes.
Is there something that changed in like the refereeing of the game that scaled that back?
Well, I mean, for sure, because ball handling became something that they don't call fouls on anymore. Like you can carry over and you can travel and all of that stuff. And so that's going to lead to smaller, faster players having more dominance in the game. I mean, it's the
Hmm.
Jordan rules.
Right.
Jordan would dribble, once, run 5 yards, and then dunk the ball. And like it was appealing, and that makes for really good television. And so, as sort of a purist back when I was a kid of like wanting to see the strategy and stuff. And I should note too, like one of the things that when I was a kid appealed to me is that I was profoundly dyslexic as a kid. So I couldn't read really until I was 10 years old. But I was already into sports by that point because what my mind has always been good for is sort of seeing patterns of stuff
Mm.
and repetition, like a little OCD, a little ADHD. I can do all that stuff. I can see those things. And so even before I knew what stuff was, I understood what these set plays were in basketball. I was like, oh, that's a box and one. That's what they're going to do right there. I can see it. And once I could start to read, I was reading like all these strategy books and stuff, which is silly because I was never going to play very well because no matter what, I was going to be a dumpy middle-aged Jew. Like that was just foretold. Like my mom did not marry up. She just married a guy that looked like me. So I was never gonna be 6'4", just a solid 6'2", as Paula knows. She's seen me
Hmm.
in person, pretty
Yeah.
tall, pretty fit. Uh, but so I could always see like the patterns of the plays and stuff, and I was into that. And it's also why I liked football because I could start to see like, oh, what they're gonna do.
Shapes. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I could see the shapes, and so I found that really appealing to me. And then once I could read and experience life and do other things and was not just by myself watching television and listening to sports announcers, the wanting the action and the drama became more interesting. And I found that really as a basketball fan in college basketball when I was younger, because I
Mm.
thought it was a more dynamic sport when I was a little
Yeah.
kid. The difference between the two of them now is fairly negligible, except, with time and the shot clock and all that stuff.
Okay, side question, because you're a literary person. Does it bother you that it's not pronounced Celtics?
Look, here's the thing. Fuck them no matter what their name is.
Correct.
Yes. That is the
We are-
correct answer, Todd.
Yeah.
We are
Fuck
not
them.
fans of Boston in this
No,
house.
no.
No.
So here's the important understanding of my basketball fandom. So I grew up in the Bay Area, so the Warriors are number one.
Yes.
But my AM radio picked up Chick Hearn calling Laker games at night.
Hmm.
Because remember when we were kids, you would listen to your AM radio, and at night the signal would expand, and you could hear stuff. And so I would get into my bed with my little transistor radio, and I would listen to Chick Hearn calling
Mm.
Laker games. And this is like 1978, 1979,
Wow.
right when Magic got on the team, and Kareem was already there.
Kareem. Hmm.
And so, like, I fell in love with the Lakers even then, even though the Warriors were my team. But the Warriors were bad for my entire
Very long time.
life.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
there would be like 3 years where they'd be okay. They'd win like 50 games one year, and then they'd lose 50 games the next year. You'd be like, oh, they're going to be good. And then they'd trade everybody, and then they'd rehire Nelly and all that shit. But the Lakers were always my number two. And so no, fuck Boston, fuck the
Hmm.
Celtics, fuck Larry Bird, fuck Cornbread Maxwell, fuck all those guys.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
also love that you are fully just California Love. It's one of your favorite songs
That is
because
correct.
you don't do like the Bay versus NorCal, SoCal. You are loving teams from both, and I'm here for that
Yeah.
because there is a bit of an intrastate rivalry.
Well, but to be clear, I am not a
Okay.
Dodger fan. Like
Okay.
people will
Well,
say, "Hey, Todd, you
There
want to
is
go to
a
the Dodger
line,
game?"
P. There is a line, God
yeah,
damn
I
it.
hear that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Like people like will offer me tickets. Todd, you want to go to the Dodger game? Are they playing the A's? No, no, I don't want to go. I'm not going to root for the Dodgers.
Wait, bro, but your team's going to Vegas.
Well, this is important. I lived in Vegas for a couple of years,
Your
and the
Oh.
city
your
of Las
books
Vegas,
are set in Vegas.
yeah, the city of Las Vegas has made me about $1 million.
Hmm.
So,
Wait, actually, speaking of Las Vegas, Todd, are you aware of this Las Vegas conspiracy theory about the Luca trade and
I was
AD?
about to ask you that.
no, is the
So,
mob involved?
so
Maybe
maybe there is a
there's some back scratching that people are floating. Go V, you
What?
tell.
Tell me this conspiracy theory.
it's like a follow the money, I think, type of theory,
Okay,
which is okay, so the Mavericks new owners, there's two families.
right,
The theory is they didn't buy the NBA team. They didn't buy the Mavericks because they love basketball. They bought it because they love casinos.
right,
Because one of the families also runs, what is it called? Like the Las Vegas Sands Corporation or something.
right.
And
That's correct.
and they've been trying so hard to legalize gambling in Texas. So they've put money in lobbyists' pockets and they're trying to make all the political donations, but it hasn't worked so far in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So the theory goes that by trading away Luca, they
Mm-hmm.
have guaranteed the Mavericks will basically stop winning over the next few years,
Which is correct.
which is correct. And there's no superstar to build around,
Right,
no draft capital to build with.
right.
And they've already pissed off their fan base. So people are canceling season tickets, unfollowing social media accounts. But if you know the Seattle Supersonics, you know how quickly you can kill a fan base.
Can I talk to you briefly about the Seattle Supersonics?
Always, because I love them
Yes.
so much. Yes.
Well, I'll let you finish, and then we'll talk
Okay.
about the Sonics.
Well,
Because
in
you're
the
gonna
end,
like this.
basically, it's like, are they actually trying to get this team over to Vegas?
Right.
So completely
So,
squash the economy related to the Mavs and bring them over to Vegas.
And
okay.
the other, I'll just add, the other thing I heard is that is there some connect where the owner or the manager of the Lakers somehow had clout in Vegas that was going to be able to help them do something? Because everyone's like, how did this trade happen for so cheap? And there was probably a
Right.
backroom deal with the Lakers personnel.
Okay. So,
Okay, Supersonics. Before
this
you
is
get
this
to
is going to
that.
give you some insight into
Okay.
these things. The Seattle Supersonics were owned by a partnership. It was Howard Schultz of Starbucks and another man. Do you know the Hanukkah song by
That was the
Adam Sandler?
only
Adam
thing that I
Sandler?
had in mind as you were speaking, because that's the
The
only
owner
thing
of
I
the
know
Seattle
about the Seattle
Supersonicas
Supersonica. Yeah.
celebrates Hanukkah? That's my Uncle Stan. My uncle owned the Seattle Supersonics.
Get out of here, Todd. Don't tell me you're not going to start being like all Jews are related and here's a story here.
Uncle Stan owned the Seattle Supersonics, and they sold them to the dude from Oklahoma City. And so Stan passed away a couple years ago, and we were very close. And my cousin Joe called me one day, and he's like, "Dude, we were going through all the stuff, and I got all the paperwork on the sale." And so I was up in Seattle, and we sat down one day, and we went through like the entire sale of the Sonics to the Oklahoma City guy. It was
Holy
fascinating.
shit. This is
Fascinating.
incredible. No kidding.
Yeah. So my uncle, he had a fascinating life. So my uncle was in 1964. My uncle wrote the Civil Rights Act. Those, what's being sort of undone by the United States government right now.
Correct.
My
Yeah.
Uncle Stan wrote the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
God damn it.
Um,
People are coming at Uncle Stan's life's
Hard
work.
work.
He is.
Yeah.
He negotiated the trade agreement in 1976 to open trade with China.
Oh my God.
He owned the Seattle Supersonics. And this is important for all of our desires. he was hugely instrumental in getting weed legalized in Washington state because his son, my late cousin Aaron, was a gangster and kept getting arrested for drug dealing. And so Stan thought, well, if I can get weed legalized, I can keep Aaron out of prison. We can open up some dispensaries for Aaron.
Oh, we all
Oh
need
my
an Uncle
gosh.
Stan in our corner.
Also,
So
Washington was the pioneer of that in
I
the
know.
country.
I know. So when you
Wow.
go and you look up the legislation for legalized marijuana in the state of Washington, you'll see that his law firm, Garvey, Schubert, Adams, and Bear, was very instrumental in the legislation. My
Oh,
uncle,
That's so cool,
um,
Todd.
like when he was a huge Democratic supporter and a packager. So, for instance, whenever Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama would come to town, they'd stay at his house. So this guy was a
oh my
player.
God.
He did all the big things. What I can tell you about the NBA is that kind of conspiracy just yeah, they're all out for themselves.
Mhm.
Hmm.
No one wants the Lakers don't want a team in Las Vegas. A team in Las Vegas is their area.
Right.
Las
Yeah, that's
Vegas is their
Market.
competition. Yeah.
suburb. Yeah.
Market share. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that they have the Clippers is bad enough, but to share that market share with Las Vegas.
Wait, so then, Todd, why do you think, because this is what has flabbergasted everyone, why do you think that the Spurs traded away Luca?
Oh, why the Mavs did?
Or
Because
sorry, yeah.
they were going to be a 47 win team with him or without him. And they didn't want to give him $325 million
Million. Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah.
It's not unlike sort of how it was for Kevin Durant until he won the title, right? It's like every team that he's on reaches a ceiling and they can't win. And so if Dallas is never going to build a championship team around him and recognize that, and if they were actually concerned about his conditioning, which I don't think they were, then they could have seen it. But I think they saw that number, realized that no matter what, they're in a really tough division, with the Lakers always going to be pretty good. Golden State's always going to be pretty good. Phoenix being really good and Denver being a juggernaut at this point. It's like they have to be 15 wins better a season and then be even better in the playoffs, which they haven't been except for that 1 year, essentially. And then they still didn't win the title. So I think it's sort of what you see a lot in sports, which is a team that has a great player trades them when they realize, well, we can win 47 games with him or without him.
Yeah. Like
Um,
when the Giants handed Saquon to the Eagles.
right. Though we got to watch that on TV, which is upsetting.
Yeah.
But as an A's fan, to equate this to baseball, it's like, every 5 years, Billy Beane would be like, well, we're not going to win the title again. So I might
Let's
as well
just
start this whole thing over and
Yeah.
trade every single starting pitcher for young talent and, try to be good. The problem is that Dallas didn't get anything in return. They got
Yeah.
a busted up center who can't play 50 games a season, who immediately got injured. So
Yeah.
it just seemed to me like they just realized we have to start this whole thing over,
So they
which is
made a
too
bad
bad.
deal, would
I
you
mean,
say?
bad for them, good for LA sports. And
Yeah.
the Lakers, I think trading for Luka is great because he's going to be the next LeBron or whatever. I mean, he's
right.
already in that echelon, but
Correct.
also he's got a big personality and he's good looking. These things help. He's going to be a good face of the franchise when LeBron is gone and it's just Luka and LeBron's kid for
Mm.
the next 25 years. We haven't talked too much about the generational talent of Bronny
Mm.
because he's not good.
I was gonna say
I
talent.
He's bad. He's bad.
He's bad. But
He's bad.
like, do you think that Lakers fans would rather just keep Bronny and have LeBron move on?
Well, no, LeBron's never going to be Kobe, and I think
Yeah.
that's the damning indictment against him in Los Angeles. He's never going to be Kobe, but they will sorely miss him when he's gone. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
he brings so much attention and people want to play with him. But I think Luka's a generational talent. I mean, the dude's fat and going 27-7-7. So if he actually like gets on a diet plan and gets maybe like a diuretic and like loses some water weight.
This
Could
is what we were talking about last time, like the amount of people talking about this man's weight and
Wait.
calling him essentially a fatty.
Yeah. Yeah. Luca and I weigh the same, but I'm 5'10".
Could you imagine though if he
It's
gets so fit? It's like when you like leave your relationship and you move on to the next partner and you're
Yeah.
like, check me out, motherfucker.
Yeah, if he gets a summer body, like if he goes on the Wegovy and gets a summer body,
Well, he's in
he
the
could
right
be
town.
he is in the right town. I mean, I feel bad for the Warriors because Luka is there, and the Warriors picked up Jimmy Butler, which might get them a title this year, but then they're not going to have anybody in a year.
So, Todd, I have a question for you, given your NBA fanship, because part of my goal is always how do we get, particularly female fans into a sport, and the NBA is really not at its most exciting point right now. What would you recommend as the entry point to start to get into professional basketball? Whether it's somebody who's new as a fan or maybe trying to get back into it to get that engagement going again.
Well, I mean, the honest truth is that the WNBA is a really good product.
That
I
is.
love to watch the WNBA.
Yes.
Those games are fucking intense.
Yes, hell
And
yeah.
so, this new wave of WNBA stars has, I think, energized the fan base in a way that perhaps they haven't had before. And so, they don't necessarily, I mean, not that sports need to be divided by gender lines, obviously, or fandom for that matter. But I think it's like, well, you know what? The WNBA is doing a really good job engaging women in the sport and now suddenly engaging men as well, which makes it easier, I think, for women to bring men to the games with them without feeling like they're suffering somehow by sitting in great seats watching amazing athletes play basketball. So, I think the only way to get anyone ever interested in professional sports as an adult, because that's the challenge.
Yes.
It's easy when you're a kid, because when you're a kid, you have you become them. That's when you start to say we as it relates to the team that you are a fan of.
That's it.
You say that as an adult, that makes you a psychopath. Like, I listen to a fair amount of sports talk radio, like when I'm driving places, and when I hear someone calling in, it's like, yeah, we really got to run the 3-4. It's like, you need to, number one, not speak in the plural. And number two,
It is sad.
you have no say.
Yeah. Yeah, armchair experts all over
armchair
the place.
experts. But it's that we thing, that's the identity that you get as a kid when you're trying to figure out who you are. And so you identify with the sports team or you identify with the player. And I mean, and here I'll show you something I keep on my desk, for instance. And I swear this has a long range answer. So on my desk where I sit and I write great works of fiction, like I have, for instance, Ricky Henderson's rookie card on my desk at all times.
Rest in peace.
Because when I was a little kid, he was my hero. And I was a strange, weird little kid. And here was this amazing athlete that people admired. And so I was a strange, weird little kid. And I wanted to be Ricky Henderson. And so I identified with Ricky Henderson. And so I'm going to be an A's fan no matter what, because he made me feel safe. For me, that identification was happening at a very young age because I was looking really for role models as a kid. Single mom, no dude in the house who's teaching me anything about sports. My brother was, reading Dune, so he wasn't going to help me. And if I wanted to be friends with other boys, like I had to understand sports. And as a weird little kid, like, okay, once I understood sports, I'm not going to get picked on anymore. And then it just grew into this weird thing where I'm 54 years old and wearing a full uniform on a podcast.
But
So
there's that value is still, I think, there as an adult, right? The shared culture of it.
The shared thing really is important. And I think now where you see it and how you get people involved in it is at that emotional level. So let's take, for instance, the fires that just happened in LA. The way that people have sort of shared mourning and shared expressions of grief and shared expressions of strength and power is they go to a Laker game and they play I Love LA and people cheer and they're like, yes, these people and their victory represents me right now. I am proud of these people representing me in this torn place. And you see that over and over and over again. Like you saw it after 9/11 with the baseball teams in New York. You see it whenever there's a mass shooting. So every 6 to 8 days, when a baseball team or a basketball team or a football team is suddenly like Green Bay strong because someone slaughtered 26 people inside of a house somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I think that identity to bring people into the sport, be it basketball or anything else, at this point comes from the emotional level of we're not just supporting a team, we're supporting our way of life. Our morality,
our
our
values.
Place. Yeah, our values.
Place. Yeah.
And our values are, the Lakers win. The Lakers are always going to win. They're glamorous. They're going to win. The Dodgers win. We win. this is why in the Bay Area, as you know, it's like people loved the East Bay teams, the Warriors and the A's and the Raiders, because they were a reflection of the East Bay. Blue
Hmm.
collar, gritty, hardworking, not a lot of superstars, but got it done. Whereas the 49ers and the Giants are always perceived to be sort of the more glamorous teams. And so it's that city identification, I think. That's how you bring people in on an emotional level now to make them care about it. And then, if they're never going to be interested in the sport itself, then the drama of individual moments has to be it. Like I always drag my lovely wife in and be like, "You got to watch this. History's about to happen." And she's like, "Are you going to scream?" And I was like, "Well, maybe."
Yes. No, Todd, you're right. Pete and I talk about this a lot, which is if somebody gets me excited about the story of the
Hmm.
team or the story of the athlete, I will show up to any game or match to
Right.
get investment into that storyline.
Yeah, or if there's like a matchup that has a history, like that's always really
Yeah.
exciting.
Or say, for instance, Taylor Swift is involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
That helps. It's big.
Yeah, there's so many, we talk so much about like sports documentaries, and aside from that Michael Jordan one, the NBA hasn't really done like a window into the NBA
Yeah.
like a lot of other sports have that have really garnered visibility. So that could be
They
a way
did
to get
that.
those stories out.
Yeah, they did that Bird Magic documentary that was really good. Or maybe that was a 30 for 30 or something like that. But yeah, there hasn't been like the Magic or not Magic, the Michael Jordan documentary. Like that was
Just
catnip for me. Like I was
Oh,
yeah.
in,
And that
yes.
was like
in.
memed to death. It still is. Like
Yes.
very popular. Yeah.
Well, and the cool thing about that is, Michael Jordan is not a human being to us. Michael
Hmm.
Jordan is literally a superhero. And to see him being super petty is really appealing.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. Because I think on some level we knew like you have to
Right.
sort of be that way.
The most petty motherfucker that's ever walked the earth. And I take that personally.
Yes.
It's like, you don't
Well,
have to take it personally. You're Michael Jordan.
and all of us are petty to a degree. So when we see Michael
Oh, I'm
Jordan
super
do it,
petty.
you're like, oh, fuck yeah.
Two things drive me primarily, my pettiness and my narcissism.
Mine is spite.
Oh, I love spite.
Yeah. You know what's so funny talking about spite and Michael Jordan? So if you're a Bravo fan, you might know who Larsa Pippen is. She was one of the
Yes.
Miami housewives. She was
Yeah.
married to Scottie Pippen. And then she just reemerged dating Michael Jordan's son.
Yeah. Michael Jordan's
Like,
like busted up son. Marcus.
like
Yeah, it's gross. Like his
it's
son
weird.
Marcus is like, it looks like Belle Biv DeVoe. Like, he got the big glasses, and he's just like kind of awkward, and
That
like,
girl is poison. So
yeah, and it's
No,
just like
yeah, it's next
not
level.
not cool. Then like I saw this recently, I was like, what happened to that dude? And I had to go look up all his stats at Central Florida and be like, wow, this guy was not talented.
But it was enough for Larsa, and maybe a little
Yes.
satisfaction for the Jordan family as well.
That's so weird though. And now you
Isn't that
understand why
weird?
Pippen hates him also. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh yeah, your son's sleeping with my ex-wife, mother of
Yeah.
my children.
All right, Todd, we have one final question for you, and then we'll go let you write a book.
Okay.
Okay, so you're watching basketball, but now we're sort of like post NFL, pre NBA playoffs. What are you not missing in the sports world when it's on right now?
Ooh, well, I'm pretty good about watching as many Warriors games as I can. So there's
Go
that.
Warriors.
But pitchers and catchers just reported. Like baseball season is around the corner. So I'm not missing like I won't miss any sort of big NBA games. Like I like to watch all of those. I'm really wanting to see the Lakers when they're at full strength. When Luka's really playing 35 minutes, I want to watch that. But at this point, like I'm really sort of gross with this. Like every morning, I spend like 30 minutes reading about like what might happen in spring training for the Oakland A's, who are the
Mm.
Sacramento A's, and
Okay.
it's just dudes on the internet talking about things they don't have any insight on, and I'm just like, well, that could happen. That could happen. No, I haven't played fantasy sports in a couple years, but part of me is like, maybe I get into fantasy again this year because I
Hmm.
don't have enough going on. I should start caring
Yeah.
about people that I don't know.
Listen, we all could use some escape to fantasy probably at this
Yeah.
at this
Yeah,
point. So I
that's true.
fully support
Yeah,
any
because I'm
involvement.
way more invested in sports right now than I am in actually watching news.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of my things that I've devoted myself to as the world crumbles around me is not getting upset with every single thing that happens. And so
Hmm.
therefore spending time looking at the things that I care about on a joy level, like sports, other people's misery,
Yeah.
and
Preach.
making
Love
sure that
it.
I'm taking my passions and exploring them in a real way. So I
I
I've
support
devoted
this.
my mind to being ready for baseball season so that way I can ignore the slouching of fascism towards the shores of California.
Yes. Yeah. It's
Support it.
news. That's not news following
Right.
sports.
It's like eating Girl Scout cookies. Like, oh, it said there's protein in Thin Mints, so
Yeah. I made a
that's dinner.
very charitable donation by buying this box of cookies. So,
I'm at a station in my life where they come to my house,
That's
yeah.
what's up.
and that's it.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
That's why we're the
They
full-size
deliver.
house. We
It's
engender confidence in the neighborhood where
Oh, the
people, where
full-size
children,
candy is what
yeah.
that means, V,
Oh
for
yeah, Penny, I
Halloween.
don't know if you know, but at Halloween we're the
They do
This is the
full-size.
full-size
spot
bars.
where you
This is
gotta
all a
be.
long way of saying that I learned all these things through sports. Like if you can ply the fandom with the things that they want when they want them, i.e., on one day of the year you give them a full-size candy bar. They will be loyal to you. In the Halloween situation, that means they aren't going to break into my car when they become 16.
Hmm.
And you will continue to support them even through thick and thin. And when they get rid of your favorite players, you'll just chalk it up to the drama of being a human being, and you'll
Mm.
continue, even as a 54-year-old man, to wear fandoms of
Mm.
two distinct teams at any given time.
You're investing in your community,
I'm
Todd.
investing in my community.
Well, we can't wait to have you back because clearly you have lots to say on every sport, and baseball season's a coming.
I'm ready.
Yes.
So we can't wait to talk to you again. But thank you so much for bouncing off with us today.
Thank you for having me. And hey, listeners, you go out there and you grab those balls and you play with them.
Best
Oh, that's so
advice.
good.
It's just
That's a good
investing in your
motto for
community.
something.
Thank you,
It's
Todd.
investing in the community. You two are broken.
What a gem.
Is he the best?
Oh my God. He's so funny, dude. What a character. Truly.
Yeah. Never fails to surprise me how all of our guests keep reiterating the same thing about fandom, just like the need for belonging and the WNBA getting name checked with
Mm.
every single guest we've had, pretty much, I feel like. And what Todd was saying is that their product has all of a sudden become super popular. And we were talking last week, right? The NBA never helped the WNBA out. And now you know what? The NBA's numbers are down. Viewership is down like 28% or something.
It's so fucking sad, actually. Like,
Mhm.
I've never known a time where the NHL would beat out the NBA in the US, at least. And Four Nations Face Off, that US Canada game blew the NBA All-Star out of the water.
Totally. And when he was saying that about these all-star games not having like stakes at all, that's something that has been so crazy to watch with the Four Nations face-off is that like these guys are playing hard because we got countries involved.
Yes, with some political tension.
Mad political tension.
I mean, 3 fights in 9 seconds. Come on, dude. This is no exhibition fucking game like the NBA. Well, the other thing I didn't get to mention that I will hear just about the NBA is not only I think are people frustrated with kind of where the game is and the format of the game, but they really fucked up the All-Star media coverage. I think LeBron did him dirty by announcing minutes before the game that he's going to be out and not playing.
Oh my God.
And then they did this very weird thing, P, where there was an 18-minute break during the tournament to pay tribute to Inside the NBA, you know, the one with like Shaq and Charles Barkley. But that program isn't going away. They're just moving to ESPN and not to TNT anymore. But it felt like a funeral for this show that's still going to keep going. And they got Kevin Hart to like maybe make some jokes and make it entertaining. It was such a flop. People were so frustrated. And it reminds me of why I get frustrated watching NFL games, which is there's so many fucking commercials. That's what the All-Star game felt like. They felt like they fucked it up because they didn't have enough entertaining bits in between that tournament that I felt like I was watching a ton of commercials. Like, such a joke. They need to do better in so many ways, not just, of course, the format of the game, but I think the way they're even broadcasting it needs to be more engaging for your regular fan.
Interesting. So now we just wait and see what ESPN does with it and if they do better than TNT.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
I know. So,
Well, they certainly have more experience in sports.
and I'm hoping that pays off in some way. The way that Todd
Yeah.
talked about becoming a fan really since he was a kid, as we've heard from a lot of our super fans,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of wanting to see yourself in the team, wanting to see yourself in the player. That's what I think they should spend their time doing, is running these
Yeah.
vignettes, running
Featurettes.
these stories in between, rather than this terrible 18-minute break that happened.
Yeah, what he said about the city stuff really is what resonated with me the most, like this sense of place. And what I was thinking of, like, as brown girls who are kids of immigrants, like there's something about belonging and sense of place that feels that much more important to me, even now as an adult. Like he was talking about it as trying to belong as a nerdy kid, but I feel it every day, constantly. And so, like, I will admit the Dodger passion was really ignited in me when I felt the LA kinship over the last couple seasons. And then realizing that there was a battle that was being waged on that diamond that was also happening with me between my LA life and my New York life. And that was very meaningful.
God, you got it. Like the sense of belonging. I remember, so yeah, I've been following sports since I was a kid. It got me to conversations with people I wouldn't otherwise talk to. I remember getting reactions from other people like, oh shit, what's going on with like the Dallas Cowboys right now? Like, what? It's just, you want to see yourself, you want to find yourself, you want to get some alignment, that sense of belonging. And that's exactly what it is, no matter who we have talked to.
Amazing. Well, V, what are you currently obsessed with?
Okay, so I don't know if you got to see this, P, but SNL did their 50-year anniversary celebration. And
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I saw Will Ferrell doing They Not Like Us. It was
on
so
a guest star.
good.
Yes!
Yeah.
That was like pure nostalgia for me, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I don't know many of the skits maybe like 1995, but they did this section of the celebration where it was really like an ode to the Lonely Island guys. Andy Samberg and a couple others, where they did these digital shorts. Lazy Sunday, Dick in a Box, Jizz in My Pants. Like, I just remember being in university, like in college, and that's when YouTube was also starting to be a major player in how we viewed things.
Yeah.
What I just remember being like watching Lazy Sunday on YouTube over and over and over and over. Notably, Justin Timberlake was not there.
I was just going to mention him because of the sports connection this week. So I asked Dan about that, and he was saying they are trying to, like, I guess, bring on more celeb backers.
Yeah.
But like that one, that is literally the weirdest, most random choice. He's not even relevant enough to be at the SNL party that he like featured in one of these skits.
I think he's still hiding from the public. He's talking about TGL. So I think it's Tiger's team, right? The Jupiter team.
It's the Jupiter team, yeah.
That Justin Timberlake is like now a partner in.
Limited partner.
Which is
whatever
like,
that means. Like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
He is limited in many ways.
That is probably how Jessica Biel would describe him. He's a limited partner.
Oh, that's good.
I really thought he'd be there because he's been on that show so many times. But I will say it was long, the SNL 50 celebration, but it was incredible to see that many talented comedians in a room doing their thing. And it was really quite nostalgic for me as well. And I've gone back to watch some of the skits that they did that night. It was awesome. I highly recommend you check it out.
What is your favorite like cast era?
Okay, so this is like an ongoing question because the anniversary. The hard part for me is I can't truly appreciate because I wasn't alive slash aware how important Eddie Murphy was to SNL and the characters that he did and the impressions that he did. But all I can hear about are people hearkening back to his importance and then seeing clips years later. I think he played an important role. I don't know if his entire cast did, but I definitely grew up with like the Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Seth Meyers, a group that I just think can't be, but I'm biased, but can't be replicated. They were all so fucking genius, incredible writers as well as the performers. That group will always hold a special place in my heart.
Okay, yeah, that was like a very mainstream, like very solid. Like all of those people are doing so much work
So
out
much,
in the
so
business.
stacked. What about for
Yeah.
you? Do you have like a particular?
I just live for Kristen Wiig. This is not my answer, but I just think she is an American treasure. I will watch anything that she does. She's unbelievable, and I
Yes.
just will ride or die for Kristen Wiig. But
Yes.
I loved her group of like the Kate McKinnon, like all of that is a great group. But I grew up on the Will Ferrell was still there, but it was the Anna Gasteyer, Sherry O'Terry, Chris
Terry.
Kattan,
Yes.
Daryl Hammond.
Hammond. Yep.
So that was the era that
was
I
a
felt
good
like was
Parnell.
formative.
Yeah. What about you, P? What are you obsessed with this week?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that I've gotten you obsessed with Extracted. We watched it again this week and we're still so obsessed. It's so good.
Okay, I haven't seen this week's episode yet, but
Okay.
I will say, like, I'm in.
All in.
I saw one episode and I was like, this is incredible. I love this format. Let's do this.
You're gonna love the second one. But my obsession is actually the end of Cobra Kai.
Oh, yeah.
They've dropped the last set of episodes. I just finished the finale. And I just have to say, what a show.
Okay. So I will just share. I never got into it,
Okay.
which is tragic, I think, because everyone I know loves it. Obviously, it's like nostalgia still for me, too. That's always a
Totally.
sell. So I should watch from season 1 on.
Yes, start it. Season 1 will get you. Like the first episode will get you because
Okay.
that first season really leans into the nostalgia of the movie. It's so clever. So I was turned on to that show by my cousin who discovered it when it was on YouTube Red, which is like not even a thing anymore. And then Netflix picked it up. After that first season, which felt like, Danny and Johnny are grown up, and so it's them being fuckwits as adults. And that's really interesting to see. And then it takes more of like it turns more into like a teen drama, I would say.
Okay.
But the adults and their dynamics still figure really heavily. It treats regional karate with the gravitas of the Olympics.
Is it like competing dojos and the whole thing?
Competing dojos,
Okay.
but like with all these like background vendettas that run really deep, and then that starts to translate down into the new generation, and then they kind of escalate the villain each season, but in a way that like because it is silly and campy and soapy, you're kind of here for it. I think what is lovable about it is that it's gratuitous and they know, and
Yeah.
they're leaning into it.
Perfect. Do they describe themselves as a comedy series?
I
How
think
do they
it's
describe it?
technically a drama.
Okay. Interesting.
But it is
Yeah.
really funny. What I love about this and what I want to see way more of is like mining a nostalgic cultural thing, whether it's a movie or whatever, and really extracting everything you can out of it to tell today's story of it.
Amazing. Yeah, not like the reboots we've been seeing that have been flopping. That seems
Yeah, like-
lazy.
Exactly. Not rebooting with all new people, not rebooting with just one or two people.
Yeah.
They went so deep into the canon and the lore of the Karate Kid world that like all of those people reprised their roles. So it's really amazing. And so like the finale, she's like, Jersey tough, and he goes, Valley tough. And I was
Oh,
like, yes,
so
that's what I'm
cheesy.
talking about. So cheesy. But
cheesy.
that's what I'm talking about. It's like, it's going to tug on all of those moments for you where you're like,
Ah,
they're pandering to me and I'm eating it up. Because there's a lot of fun karate in it too.
that's awesome. I do think that series is worth me giving a try. It's always been on my list. I just haven't ever committed to it. But that's probably after Extracted now.
Yeah, yeah.